The night began like any other, but it would soon turn into a nightmare that would etch itself into the memories of all who lived through it. Los Angeles, a city of lights and life, was plunged into chaos. A ferocious fire broke out, spreading faster than anyone could have imagined. The flames leaped from building to building, devouring everything in their path with a hunger that seemed insatiable. The sky turned an ominous shade of orange, blanketed with thick smoke that stung the eyes and choked the lungs. Families fled their homes, clutching their most precious belongings, their faces pale with fear. The crackle of flames and the cries of terrified residents mixed with the wail of sirens, creating a grim symphony that filled the night. Amid this chaos stood a small, humble house in the Pacific Palisades, a home filled with love, laughter, and the dreams of a young Muslim couple who had recently become parents. Their baby, Abdullah, was their greatest joy, a beacon of hope in their lives. But tonight, the home they had so carefully built was under siege by the relentless fire. The fire roared as it reached their street, engulfing everything in its path. Walls collapsed, furniture turned to ash, and the once vibrant neighborhood became unrecognizable. Yet, in the middle of this devastation, something extraordinary was about to happen. As firefighters battled the inferno, one among them, a man named Lucas, felt an unexplainable pull toward the small house. Despite the overwhelming flames and the danger of collapsing structures, he pushed forward, determined to investigate. The heat inside was unbearable, searing his skin even through his protective gear. Smoke filled every corner, making it nearly impossible to see. But then, through the chaos, Lucas heard something, a faint, almost imperceptible sound. It was the cry of a baby. Guided by the sound, Lucas moved deeper into the house, navigating through debris and flames that threatened to consume everything. When he reached the source of the cry, he froze in disbelief. There, in the middle of a room that had been ravaged by fire, lay baby Abdullah. He was unharmed, his tiny hands clutching a Quran close to his chest. The floor around him was untouched by flames, as if an invisible barrier had protected him. The sight was surreal. The fire had consumed everything else in its path, but it seemed to have stopped short of the baby, sparing him in a way that defied explanation. Lucas whispered a prayer under his breath as he gently lifted the child. Abdullah's eyes, wide and innocent, looked up at him as if understanding the significance of the moment. Clutching the Quran tightly, the baby seemed calm, a picture of serenity amidst chaos. As Lucas emerged from the house carrying Abdullah, the scene outside fell silent. Firefighters and onlookers alike were stunned by what they saw. The baby, unharmed, and the Quran, untouched by flames, were undeniable symbols of something far greater than mere coincidence. The first rays of dawn began to pierce the smoky skies of Los Angeles, but the nightmarish scene from the raging fires still lingered. Streets were covered in soot and ash, the remnants of homes and lives reduced to rubble. Survivors sat scattered on the dusty ground, wrapped in thin emergency blankets, their faces etched with shock and despair. Some wept silently, while others stared blankly at the devastation before them. The once bustling neighborhoods were now a somber reminder of how fragile life could be. In the midst of the chaos, firefighters moved with urgency, their faces grim but determined as they fought to extinguish the last flames. Among them was Lucas, a firefighter whose hands were still trembling from the daring rescue he had just made. Clutched close to his chest was Abdullah, a baby barely a year old. Lucas had found him buried beneath the rubble of what was once a modest home. The child was wrapped in Lucas's soot-stained jacket, his wide, teary eyes fixed on the smoke-filled heavens above. He didn't cry, didn't flinch, just lay silently in the arms of his savior, as though shielded by an invisible force. Lucas couldn't help but wonder how the infant had survived such a deadly firestorm. As soon as the medical team arrived, they rushed to examine Abdullah. What they discovered left everyone speechless. Despite being pulled from the heart of the blaze, Abdullah's tiny body bore no burns, no scratches, not even the faintest sign of heat exposure. It was as if the fire had passed him by, leaving him untouched. But the true marvel lay in what the child was holding. In his small hands was a Quran, its cover pristine and its pages untouched by flames or smoke. The sight of the unharmed book in the baby's arms sent a ripple of astonishment through everyone around. "This doesn't make sense," one of the medics murmured, his voice shaking. "The house was nothing but ashes. There was no way anything or anyone could survive there." The firefighters, medics, and onlookers exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. Lucas, still standing nearby, felt his breath catch in his chest. He had seen miracles before, moments when luck or skill defied the odds. But this was different. As the medics gently took Abdullah from Lucas's arms and carried him to the waiting ambulance, the firefighter couldn't move. His thoughts raced, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed. How had the baby survived unscathed? How had the Quran emerged without a single singe? He looked back at the smoldering ruins of the house, now silent except for the faint crackle of dying embers. Elsewhere, the story of Abdullah began to spread. One of the local journalists, covering the devastating July fires, overheard whispers about a miraculous survival. A baby, found alive in the ruins, holding a Quran untouched by fire. It was a story that sounded almost too extraordinary to believe. The journalist quickly made his way to the scene, driven by a mix of curiosity and skepticism. By the time he arrived, the crowd was abuzz with speculation. Some whispered about divine intervention, others about luck, and a few simply stood in stunned silence, unable to find words for what they had seen. Abdullah, cradled in the arms of a medic, was the center of it all, a tiny, innocent life that had somehow survived the impossible. Lucas lingered by the rubble for a long time after the others had gone. The fire was almost out, leaving behind only thick, swirling smoke and charred remains. Yet, standing there, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he had been part of something far greater than himself. He had walked into a house consumed by flames and emerged with a miracle in his arms. The sight of the untouched Quran, the baby's unburned body, it all felt like a sign, thought of what Lucas couldn't yet say. But one thing was certain. That night, in the heart of destruction, something extraordinary had happened. When the ambulance finally arrived, a haunting silence swept over the crowd. People stood frozen, trembling, their faces pale from shock. "We just got out of the house. There was nothing left but charcoal. How could he still be alive?" one of them whispered, their voice cracking. They looked at Abdullah, who lay in the arms of the firefighter Lucas. The baby, so small and fragile, seemed out of place amidst the devastation. The air, once filled with the urgent commands of firefighters, now hung heavy with disbelief. The intensity of the moment seemed almost too surreal. Lucas, still feeling the trembling in his hands after rescuing the baby, stood in a daze. It was as if something beyond human understanding had just unfolded before his eyes. He had witnessed the flames, the smoke, the utter destruction, and yet here was Abdullah, alive. The impossible had happened, and Lucas couldn't help but feel as though he'd just glimpsed something that defied all logic. He handed Abdullah over to the medical team, who rushed him into the waiting ambulance ready to assess his condition. Yet, Lucas's heart didn't calm. How could this baby, so vulnerable, have survived such a catastrophic event? It didn't make sense. The flames should have consumed him, yet here he was, unharmed. A journalist just arriving at the scene could hardly believe what he was hearing from the witnesses. As he took notes, he overheard Lucas recounting what he'd seen. The baby held the Quran tightly, as if it was the last thing he had left in this world, Lucas explained, his voice a mix of awe and confusion. "I've been a firefighter for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this." The journalist quickly scribbled every word, but his mind was overwhelmed with questions. How had the baby survived such an ordeal? And where were his parents? The mystery deepened with every passing second. At the hospital, Abdullah was carefully examined by a team of doctors. But what they found only added to the growing sense of wonder. Despite the extreme conditions he had been exposed to, there were no burns, no signs of dehydration, no physical injuries. His tiny body was perfectly intact, as if he had never been near the inferno at all. The doctor who conducted the examination stood still, shaking his head in disbelief. There was no medical explanation for this. It was a miracle, plain and simple. Meanwhile, the search for Abdullah's parents continued, but it was a fruitless endeavor. Rescue teams scoured the ruins of the fire, hoping to find any trace of Ahmad and Leah. They combed through the wreckage, checked evacuation centers, but found nothing. The names of Abdullah's parents were listed in the population records, but beyond that, they were ghosts. No one knew if they had survived or if they had perished in the flames. A journalist, captivated by the mystery, felt compelled to write an article about Abdullah's miraculous survival. "I've never seen anything like this," he wrote, echoing Lucas's astonishment. But the questions still gnawed at him. How was it possible for the baby to survive, and where were his parents? Back at the hospital, Abdullah's condition remained as perplexing as ever. The doctors couldn't explain how he had come out of the fire unscathed. No burns, no injuries, just a healthy, calm baby. The doctor who examined him could only shake his head in wonder, unable to offer a single answer to the miracle that had unfolded before them all. The search for Abdullah's parents continued. Rescue teams went through the fire-ravaged area once more, hoping to find Ahmad and Leah, or learn of their fate in one of the evacuation centers. But despite the effort, no trace was found. Ahmad and Leah's names remained in the records, but no one knew whether they were alive or had become victims of the deadly fire in July. A journalist decided to share Abdullah's story with the world. He titled it, "The Miracle Baby Who Survived the Fire." He told the story of how Abdullah was found holding the Quran with no explanation of how he survived. The article quickly spread, touching the hearts of readers everywhere. As the Muslim community shared the story, Abdullah became a symbol of hope and strength. People from all over Los Angeles wanted to help. They raised funds for the baby and searched for any information about his family. His story was seen as a sign of God's power, and one imam even quoted a verse from the Quran, "Allah does not burden a soul except according to its ability." Surah Al-Baqarah 286. This verse reminded everyone that Abdullah was a living proof of Allah's love, a love beyond human understanding. But the reaction didn't stop there. Even non-Muslims, who had never been interested in religion, began to ask about the Quran. They wondered what made it so special that it had protected this child. Publishers saw a sudden increase in demand for copies of the Quran, and many people visited mosques, eager to learn more about Islam. One person deeply affected by Abdullah's story was Lucas, who had never believed in religion. He remembered the moment he found Abdullah, feeling as if everything around them had paused. He spoke about how the chaos seemed to stop in that one moment, with Abdullah at the center of it all. While social authorities cared for the baby, the search for his parents continued. To many, Abdullah became a symbol of hope in a time of great loss. To others, he reminded them of a power greater than they could ever understand. The mystery of how Abdullah survived and where his parents were remains unsolved. A volunteer, reading from the Quran at an evacuation center, shared another verse. "And those who earnestly seek our pleasure, we will surely show them our paths." Surah Al-Ankabut 69. Perhaps Abdullah was a sign from God, guiding hearts and minds to change. As time passed, the search for his parents continued, but no clues emerged. No trace of Ahmad and Leah was found in the ruins or at the evacuation centers. Medical records provided no answers, as if they had vanished in the flames. For many, Abdullah became more than just a child. He was a symbol of something far greater, a reminder of a power beyond human comprehension. Luke, the firefighter who discovered Abdullah, Luke could never forget the intense heat of that fire. It was like a ravenous beast, consuming everything in its path. The smoke and flames seemed to swallow the world, and the rubble scattered everywhere made every step feel impossible. Yet, in that chaotic moment, Luke found Abdullah, lying in a spot so difficult to reach that it felt like a miracle. As he held the tiny, fragile child, Luke couldn't shake the feeling that what had just happened wasn't mere luck. It was something much bigger, something that went beyond logic and reason, shaking his once firm beliefs and igniting a spark of wonder in his heart. Meanwhile, Julie, the journalist who had written Abdullah's original story, couldn't stop searching for answers. She dug deeper, interviewing neighbors in the community to learn more about Ahmad and Leah. From everyone she spoke to, the couple seemed like the embodiment of warmth and kindness. Ahmad, a civil engineer, was known for his integrity, and Leah, who was often seen taking Abdullah on morning walks, had a natural grace that endeared her to everyone. The couple had been active in the local Muslim community, often attending religious services at the mosque just down the street. Yet, despite their strong ties to the community, no one could explain their sudden and complete disappearance. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but questions. One day, Julie decided to visit the mosque where Ahmad and Leah had once worshipped. There, she met Imam Musa, the leader of the mosque. His eyes reflected the pain of the entire community as he spoke of the couple's absence. The Imam shared how the doctors who had treated Abdullah had formed a deep emotional bond with the baby. Despite losing his parents, Abdullah's joy seemed to grow with each passing day, a remarkable resilience that amazed everyone who met him. Sarah, one of the nurses who had cared for Abdullah, felt a profound change in herself after looking after him. Before, Sarah had never been interested in matters of faith, but something about this miracle stirred something inside her. She began to read the Quran, searching for deeper meaning in the story of this little boy who had survived against all odds. Julie wasn't the only one trying to unravel the mystery of Ahmad and Leah's disappearance. Uli, another journalist, retraced her steps, speaking to more neighbors, hoping to uncover any clue that might lead her to the truth. As she spoke to the people who had known Ahmad and Leah, she could feel the lingering impact of Abdullah's story. It had touched everyone, even those who had once been skeptical of the spiritual. The miracle of Abdullah's survival seemed to echo through the community, shifting hearts and challenging old beliefs. One evening, as Sarah read the Quran, a verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah struck her with unexpected force. "Whoever saves a life, then he is a man of God." It was as if the verse had been written for her, a sign that the miracle she had witnessed with Abdullah was not just a random occurrence, but a divine message, a sacred truth she was now called to embrace. Meanwhile, Abdullah's own emotional journey continued. As the investigation unfolded, he came across a small bag near the site of the fire. The bag was partially burned, but its contents remained untouched by the flames. Inside, he found several documents, including his birth certificate and a family photo. In the photo, Ahmad was holding Abdullah, with Leah smiling gently beside them. Something about the image stirred a deep, almost painful feeling in Abdullah's chest. He didn't know if it was a sign or just his emotions playing tricks on him, but he couldn't ignore the pull. Without fully understanding why, he handed the photo over to his colleague at the hospital, knowing it had to be part of the story. When G, another journalist, saw the photo, he too felt an undeniable connection to Abdullah's story. The image, the mystery, the miracle. It all came together in a way that spoke to him on a deeper level. He knew the world needed to know more. And so he published a follow-up report titled, "Where Are Abdullah's Parents? A Complete Miracle." It was a story that went beyond the search for answers. It was a story about faith, miracles, and the power of human connection. This story didn't just capture the attention of the public. It sparked deeper questions, leaving people wondering if it was merely a coincidence or if God was sending a message through the unfolding events. As the days went by, the Muslim community in Los Angeles rallied together to support Abdullah, raising funds to secure a brighter future for him, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Among the many donors, one stood out, a non-Muslim businessman who had been deeply moved by Julie's article. In his letter accompanying his generous donation, he wrote, "I'm not sure I believe in God, but this baby's story makes me want to be part of something bigger." As nights passed, the prayers for Ahmad and Abdullah echoed through the streets of Los Angeles. People gathered in mosques, offering supplications and hoping for a miracle. Imam Musa led the congregation in reciting the Quran, as hearts yearned for truth, healing, and a sign of divine mercy. Though Abdullah was too young to understand the gravity of the situation, his story had already begun to resonate with people from all walks of life. He had become a symbol of hope, faith, and the greatness of God. Those who heard his story found renewed inspiration and strength, believing that through God's will, miracles could happen even in the darkest times. But this wasn't the end of the story. One cold, quiet night, a volunteer, while working through the rubble near Ahmad's home, discovered something extraordinary. Buried in the debris was a fragment of the Quran, partially burned, but miraculously the verses in the center were still legible. Among them, one verse stood out. Its message resonated deeply with everyone who saw it. It was a symbol of faith, resilience, and unwavering belief, further fueling the community's spirit. The verse from Surah 51 read, "Akla, not the one who can't be helped." It was as though the verse had been preserved just for this moment, reminding all who witnessed it of the boundless mercy of God. As time passed, the story of Ahmad, Leah, and Abdullah continued to touch the hearts of many. The tale of their journey, filled with trials and moments of divine intervention, was recited over and over in mosques throughout Los Angeles. Imam Musa, with each recitation of Surah An-9, sought the truth, praying for understanding and guidance. Abdullah, though still too young to comprehend the depth of his role in this story, had become an unwavering symbol of God's greatness. His story was a constant reminder to all who heard it that faith, hope, and resilience could shine through even the toughest of times. But the journey was far from over. One cold night, as the community continued to pray and reflect on the events that had unfolded, a volunteer made an incredible discovery in the rubble, yet another piece of the Quran. This time, it was a more intact fragment, though still partially scorched, bearing verses that gave strength and inspiration to everyone who read them. The words were clear, powerful, and undeniable. In particular, one verse stood out as if spoken directly to the heart of every person involved. Akla, not the one who can't be helped. It was a reminder that, even in moments of despair, divine help was never far away. This message of resilience and faith spread like wildfire, uniting people from all backgrounds, Muslims and non-Muslims alike, who had been touched by Abdullah's story. The community, once divided by differences, found common ground in their collective compassion and hope. Every prayer, every act of kindness, and every donation became part of a larger movement, a movement of love, unity, and the belief that even the smallest of miracles could change lives forever. They couldn't stop searching for answers. For them, Abdullah's story wasn't just about miracles. It was a quest for something deeper, a search for meaning amid destruction and loss. Through his journey, Abdullah had taught them that hope still shines through the darkest times, and that sometimes God's answers arrive in the most unexpected ways. While the mystery of that fateful night in Los Angeles remained unsolved, one thing was clear. Abdullah's story had transformed lives, his own included. It spread like wildfire, and soon the world was asking questions. National and international media were now fixated on the event, eager to uncover the truth. The Muslim community, once hidden in the shadows of prejudice, had been thrust into the spotlight. Abdullah's miracles sparked a wave of curiosity. People started turning to the Quran, eager to learn more about the faith. Mosques that had once stood nearly empty were now filled with visitors, all seeking answers. Imam Musa, the leader of one of the largest mosques in the city, opened his doors for a Q&A session, welcoming anyone who wanted to learn. "We don't force belief on anyone," Imam Musa told a curious resident. But Abdullah's story is a reminder that God is always present, even in our darkest moments. Though the mystery still lingered, Abdullah's story had left an undeniable mark on everyone it touched. The fire of his miracles couldn't be extinguished. It spread across news outlets, through discussions on social media, and into the hearts of countless people. The Muslim community, once looked upon with suspicion, now stood with newfound pride and attention. The world was listening, and many were now questioning the Quran and Islam with open minds. In a small bookstore in downtown Los Angeles, Richard, the owner, noticed an unexpected surge in demand for the Quran. "I never imagined this would happen," he said in an interview. "One of my customers confessed they wanted to read the book that saved the baby. They were curious about its message." As the story of Abdullah's survival spread, Surah Al-Il was often mentioned, its verses describing Allah's protection of the Kaaba from the elephants. But not everyone was in awe. Some skeptics dismissed Abdullah's survival as mere coincidence, claiming the preservation of the Quran was just a media gimmick. A well-known physics professor even wrote an article claiming there were logical, scientific explanations, like the position of the room or just plain luck. This sparked heated debates across social media platforms. Yet for those who believed in miracles, Abdullah's story didn't need a scientific explanation. It was a reminder that some things are beyond human understanding, that sometimes faith is the only answer. As I delved deeper into the story, hoping to uncover more about its far-reaching impact, I had the chance to sit down with an elderly woman named Par. She had heard of and the new boss for Perrin Basinsalia, and like many others, she was curious about the contents of the Quran. We spoke about Surah Al-Il, the chapter that recounts how Allah protected the Kaaba from the elephants. This powerful story from the past still echoes in many hearts today, but not everyone was impressed by it. Some skeptics dismissed the story of Abdullah's miraculous survival, claiming it was simply a coincidence. They argued that the tale of the Quran's preservation was merely a sensationalized media story. To make their point stronger, a respected physics professor from a well-known university wrote an article that denied any divine influence in the incident. He suggested that other factors, such as the geographical positioning of the room or simple luck, could have contributed to protecting Abdullah. His article stirred up intense debates on social media, with many fiercely defending or challenging his views. But for those who believed in miracles, no amount of scientific explanation could diminish the awe they felt. To them, Abdullah's survival was nothing short of divine intervention. Abdullah, now at the hospital, had become a symbol of hope, mystery, and faith. The medical staff treating him felt an unusual sense of calm when they were near him. Sarah, a nurse who had read the Quran after meeting Abdullah, found that her life had begun to change in ways she couldn't explain. She often spoke to the baby, even though he was too young to respond, as if somehow her words carried weight. One night, as Abdullah peacefully slept in his crib, Sarah whispered softly, "Your words are why I search for God," gently brushing his small head with her hand. The words felt like a promise, a deep connection to something greater than herself. But that night, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. A volunteer, carefully sifting through the rubble near the site of the fire, found something that seemed like a lost treasure, a wedding ring. The volunteer handed the ring to the authorities, and it was identified as Abda, a ring tied to the mystery of Abdullah's parents. The discovery of the ring sent ripples through the community. At the mosque, the congregation gathered to read from the Quran, reciting Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 286. Allah does not burden a person except according to their ability. The words resonated deeply with everyone present, touching their hearts and strengthening their faith. Abdullah had been tested in ways most could never imagine, and his survival stood as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the greatness of divine intervention. His presence, though small, carried with it a message that transcended understanding, faith, hope, and the belief that miracles are still possible in this world. Despite the unanswered questions surrounding his parents, one truth remained evident. Abdullah's life was a living reminder of the miraculous power of faith. But for those closely connected to this unfolding story, the mystery was far from over. Lucas, the lead investigator still working tirelessly in the ruins, couldn't shake the feeling that the discovery of the wedding ring held more significance than anyone realized. The weight of it gnawed at him, filling him with a sense of urgency and curiosity. He turned to Huli, a journalist who had been covering the developments, and said with a troubled expression, "I'm certain this ring is a clue, but it feels like it carries an even heavier burden. If this is all that's left of Ahmad and Laila, what does it mean? What does it say about their fate? And what does it reveal about Abdullah's own journey?" Lucas's words hung in the air, unanswered. The mystery of Abdullah and his parents still loomed large, and everyone involved was left wondering what the next chapter would bring. At the hospital, little Abdullah's small face became visible amid the bustling crowd of doctors, nurses, and volunteers who kept coming and going. Sarah, a compassionate nurse, sat beside his bed, holding a small Quran found with him. Though the book had been through so much, its pages were still intact. As Sarah ran her fingers over the delicate paper, she felt the words carried a meaning far deeper than she could comprehend. She opened it at random and read aloud from Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 69, "And those who strive hard, we will surely guide them to our paths." Sarah paused, reflecting on the verse. It seemed to echo Abdullah's journey, as well as the faith and resilience of his parents. Meanwhile, at the site of the devastating fire, Lucas, a determined rescue worker, refused to give up. Using advanced thermal imaging equipment, he searched tirelessly for signs of Ahmad and Laila, Abdullah's parents. The odds were slim, but deep in his heart, Lucas felt they were missing something, a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. One morning, as sunlight began piercing through the lingering haze, the imaging device detected something unusual beneath a pile of rubble previously declared clear. Lucas's heart raced as he led the team to excavate the area. Hours of digging revealed a shocking discovery: a small room, miraculously shielded from the collapse. Inside were two bodies, their hands tightly clasped together. Ahmad and Laila had been found. Though they were no longer alive, their final moments spoke volumes. They had embraced each other, shielding one another from harm. Nearby lay another Quran, partially burned yet still readable. One verse remained untouched by the flames. "Say, never will we be saved except by what Allah has ordained for us. He is our protector." Surah Al-Qamar 51. The news of the discovery spread quickly. People across Los Angeles who had been following the story with heavy hearts now felt a mix of sorrow and peace. Abdullah, the miraculous baby who survived, had indeed lost his parents, but he hadn't lost their greatest gift, their faith, love, and strength. Lucas, filled with emotion, wrote his final article on Abdullah's story. Though Ahmad and Laila couldn't be saved, they left behind a light through their son. In the fire that destroyed everything, they remained protectors for him, reminding us all that God's presence shines brightest in our darkest hours. Abdullah was taken in by the local Muslim community, who embraced him as their own. Imam Musa, a kind and wise leader, pledged to raise Abdullah with the love and care his parents would have wanted. At a special prayer service, the Imam recited from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 286. "Allah does not burden a soul beyond that it can bear. Though Abdullah had lost so much, he stood as proof that God grants strength to those who need it most. His story teaches us a powerful lesson. In the midst of destruction, hope finds a way to survive. Abdullah's life is a testament to the power of love, faith, and the miracles that defy human understanding. Ahmad and Leela may be gone, but their legacy lives on in their son, the baby who carried their light into the world.